And welcome back to the Steve Malzberg Show, ladies and gentlemen. And joining us now is Reverend Madison Shockley, pastor of the Pilgrim United Church of Christ in California, also contributor to truthdig.org. Reverend, welcome. Happy New Year and all that kind of stuff.
Happy New Year to you, Stephen, and it's truthdig.com.
I'm sorry, did I say, okay, I said .org? I did. Guilty as charged. Okay, truthdig.com. Glad you corrected us. Okay, found your article, just, doing the research that we do here, and your piece that was written right before Christmas, Duck Dynasty, putting the racist back in Redneck. And of course you're referring to the interview given to GQ by Phil Robertson of Duck Dynasty fame, and of course A&E suspended him, and then A&E just not too long ago, after a short suspension, reinstated him. So tell me your take on what Robertson had to say.
Well, I was particularly concerned that the coverage of his remarks did not lift up the racist revisionist history as strongly as it should have, and his talking about not ever seeing any mistreatment of blacks, of his talking about people were happy and weren't singing the blues in the state which gave this country the blues, New Orleans, Louisiana, and Bourbon Street and all of that. I just found it very ironic that his growing up in the South, attending segregated schools, going to segregated parks, going to segregated pools and lunch counters and not seeing any blacks there, he did not see that as mistreatment. And so I'm not sure whether he really believes that, but he certainly knew those things. And when he talks about pre-entitlement, I was just aghast. There's no greater entitlement program in the history of the United States than Jim Crow segregation, which gave white men advantage over the entire society in every aspect of life. So I was frankly insulted to hear him talk about pre-entitlement when he benefited from all the entitlements that Jim Crow segregation gave to white men in his growing up.
Well, I want to make it clear, as I have every time we've discussed this, I am not defending what he said. Okay, I am just going to restate some of what he said as I interpreted it, and the way I interpreted it was he was very specific, talking about his own personal experience working alongside those African Americans in the same fields with them, and saying, I never heard them complain. I never heard them sing any songs that would indicate any kind of distress. I heard them sing such and such. So he was doing the same work they were doing, and he said this is what his experience with those people that he worked alongside was. I don't think that he was making a statement about Jim Crow on a larger level.
No, but he said he never saw any mistreatment of blacks. That's what the article recorded him as saying. And he didn't confine that vision to just the fields where he was working. He said he never saw any mistreatment of blacks, and he talked about pre-entitlement. That's certainly speaking of the time that he grew up in the South, and we know he attended segregated schools because all the schools in Louisiana were segregated. So he saw plenty of mistreatment, and I was just astounded that he would regard that time in this country as a benevolent and benign, happy-go-lucky time for blacks who were suffering severely under Jim Crow segregation and the discrimination. And probably, I wouldn't doubt at that time, wages were not equalized between the races. And while he went to get his paycheck for doing the same work, he probably got more pay because that was the practice in those days. And so for him not to see mistreatment, either he's blind or willfully ignorant of the facts that he experienced himself. I just found it astounding that he could say something like that. This whole nation wasn't in an uproar that his ignorant remarks and revisionist history were not reprimanded even more strongly.
Well, sometimes you have to take it from where it's coming, which leads me to my next point, and that is, and we're talking to Reverend Madison Shockley, pastor of the Pilgrim United Church of Christ in California, contributor to truthdig.com here on the Steve Malzberg Show. Your piece, putting the racist back in Redneck, seems to me to kind of indict a whole segment of the population. I mean, you go by past history. You talk about how the viewing of the so-called redneck has progressed, what it used to mean. But you kind of use his remarks and how you interpret them to kind of again you make a generalization of people who would fit his, call themselves rednecks or fit his kind of MO.
Well, I think that his statements are very clear. I just repeat what he said.
But they're his statements.
Yes, but I'm saying that he and his family are the face of the new redneck culture. And his remarks expose, I believe, what his feelings are and probably reflect a broad cross-section of that culture, which doesn't like to talk about race in the open. But I think a lot of the racism in this country, which is still with us, can be understood better through the lens of his remarks.
Do you think that there's racism on both sides?
Both sides of what?
I mean, blacks and whites are both racist? I mean, not all, but some blacks and some whites?
Racism is a system of domination of those with power over those without
No,
power.
racism, if you look in the dictionary, and I know they've changed the definition of marriage in some places, but racism is the belief of an inherent superiority of one race over the other. It has nothing to do with power, sir, with all due respect.
That's white supremacy. White supremacy is a part of the structure.
No, if you look up racism, it's going to have nothing to do with power in its definition.
Well, it depends on where you look and who's writing the
yeah, Al Sharpton is writing it. I mean, he's managed to redefine a lot of things.
I haven't referenced Al Sharpton. I've referenced my own education, my own experience, and racism is about power. I don't care how you feel about me. I care how you treat me and what power you have to change the course of my life. Racism is what changes the course of groups of people's lives. I don't care how you feel about me.
So in other words, if a black person walks up to me and calls me a white so-and-so, they're not racist because they can't affect my life. They have no power over me. And by the same token, if a white person calls a multi-millionaire CEO of a company the N-word and over again, and a black so-and-so, he's not racist because he has no power over that person?
Well, this racism is not an individual thing. It is a system of domination.
Oh, so it's impossible for blacks to be racist at this point?
Not in the United States.
What do you mean not in the United States?
Well, the power structure still is not in our hands as a
So you agree it's impossible for a black person to be racist in the United States?
Oh, yeah, I never denied that. I said that racism is a system of domination which right now is built around the principle of white supremacy.
Really? And that's why we have a black president, a black attorney general, black mayors, black people of color as governors, black Congress people because of white supremacy?
And you know what? No system of domination in the history of the world has ever been perfect. And people have been able to struggle and succeed and overturn systems of domination. And that's why we just celebrated the life and work of Nelson Mandela. And so, yeah, both things can be true at the same time. But it's also why we have, the rates of incarceration of black people that we have even under a black president.
Maybe it's because blacks commit more crime, sir?
Oh, no, not at all.
Not at all. They're not. But let me get this straight. Wait. Blacks don't commit more crime based on their own percentage of the population?
All you have to do is read Patricia Williams.
No, I'm asking you. I don't want to read Patricia Williams.
Answer the question. The new Jim Crow documents that the reason there are more blacks in prison is because the criminal justice system targets and enforces laws within a specific community to put those people in prison.
So when the statistics show that blacks disproportionately commit most of the murders and most of the violent crimes in a particular area, that's not true. It's just that they're being prosecuted for it, and whites who commit the same crimes aren't. Is that what you're saying?
What I'm saying is this, that the drug crimes put most people in prison, and the drug use in this country is equal across racial groups.
What about violent crimes?
And so if laws against drug use were equally enforced across the country, across racial groups, you'd have a different balance in the prison system. That is what I am saying.
Well, if you're talking about like cocaine and crack, crack was an epidemic that led to violent crimes against people.
I'm not talking about cocaine and crack. I'm talking about marijuana. I'm talking about methamphetamines. I'm talking about all the drugs that are against the law, but the enforcement of those drug laws is not equal.
All right, well, let's talk about violent crime. Who commits by disproportionate amount according to their population? Are you saying blacks do not commit a disproportionate amount of crime according to their population? I know in New York City they do. Murders, violent crime, no?
So then you're admitting that the drug laws are not equally
I'm not talking about the
enforced
drug laws now. Now I'm talking about violent crime because you seem to indicate that it's just selective enforcement that has all blacks in jail. And you think they're all drug offenders.
No, what I said is the majority of people in prison are there for drug use. Drug use is equal across all racial groups, but drug laws are not enforced equally across all.
I don't know where you say they're equal among all racial groups, but that's another story.
Every statistic, every study shows that whites and blacks use marijuana and other recreational drugs in equal rates.
Well, I never heard of unequal prosecution for marijuana. Certainly, if somebody is committing another crime and they're found to have marijuana on them at that time, then that becomes probably another charge. But the usual focus is on the disparity, as has been with the Justice Department and the President, between crack cocaine and regular cocaine.
You have some self-education to do.
Okay, well, I'm going to do that. I'm going to do that. Now, I'd like to...
Example. I'll give you an example.
Yeah.
I will tell you right now, even though the popular culture thinks otherwise, the most drug-infested neighborhoods in this country are the college campuses of this country. And you can walk across the college campus smoking a joint and no police officer will arrest you. That's what I'm talking about, unequal prosecution.
Okay. All right. So you're not saying blacks don't break the law. You're saying that there should be more. So you're not saying blacks don't break the law. You're not saying the blacks in prison don't belong there. You're just saying that if they did the same to whites, we'd have to build more prisons. Is that what you're saying? Or are you saying that blacks don't belong there even if they committed the crimes?
What I'm saying is this, that racism makes the criminal justice system target blacks in order to...
Are these blacks not committing the crimes, sir? Are they not committing the crimes? Are the blacks not committing the crimes, sir?
Is a tool of white racism that increases the rates of incarceration. And so what kind of society is it where if you're white and you commit a crime, you're not arrested, but if you're black and you commit a crime, you are arrested? Well, that's a racist society. All right, that's the point that I'm making here.
I'd like to ask you about Melissa Harris Perry and the disgusting remarks she made about Mitt Romney's grandson, adopted black grandson, for what she apologized. What do you think about that? Go ahead.
I absolutely agree with her apology. I think she gave a very heartfelt and, in fact, tearful apology that children should be off limits. I think the families of politicians should be off limits, and I agree 100% with her apology.
But she not only talked about mocking the son in the picture, the grandson in the picture and the family, and relating that with her panel to the Republican Party. She then went on to say, and Mitt Romney didn't even know this yesterday when he was asked about this part of it on Fox News. He said, I hadn't heard that. She said that she looks forward to the day that, I don't know, is it Jay-Z's son or whatever, daughter marries Mitt Romney's grandson. So she went on and on and on. In the same segment, she then called Abraham Lincoln her favorite kind of racist. Here's a woman who has a segment called, it's something like, is it racist? And then tells a Jewish joke when I don't think she has any Jewish roots whatsoever. Does she cross a line at all? Is she racist at all in anything she says? Or she can't be racist because she's black?
I thought I answered your question that I agree with her apology, and she apologized for all of the things that you just mentioned.
No, she didn't. I didn't hear her apologize for the Lincoln thing. I didn't hear her apologize for... She was focused on just what she said about the grandson.
Which included the Kanye remark and, and so forth. So it included all of that.
No, it didn't include all of it. The Kanye and the picture, yes.
Yeah, I think all of it is wrong.
All right. Well, at least we agree on that. Look, it's educational, sir, to talk to you. I hope you'll come back.
I'd be glad to come back anytime.
Thank you very much, Reverend. Take care. That's Reverend Madison Shockley, pastor of the Pilgrim United Church of Christ in California, contributor to truthdig.com here on the Steve Malzberg Show. I think we get to a very dangerous place when we, in effect, in my view, he's going to say he didn't say this, and no, he didn't say the word. Just like Mark Halpern never said the word death panel. But when you condone or give a pass to A, black racists, B, black criminals because blacks can't be racist under his cockamamie definition, with all due respect, which is not unique to him, and that, insinuating that blacks who are in prison don't belong there. And the argument, when you come down to it, is, well, whites did the same thing and there's not as many of them in there. Well, okay, even if that were true, which I don't buy, and there are reasons for it if it is true, high crime areas, you're not going to find, if there's white people walking around with pot in their pocket in suburbia where there's not a lot of crime, cops aren't going to stop them and they're never going to get searched. But if you're in a high crime area and you got stop and frisk, or you have crimes being committed and you're looking for suspects, and maybe this person's committing another crime and then they're searched and then you find drugs in their pocket, well, you can't say, oh, but the white person across the road in the good neighborhood, they never touched their pot or their drugs, because they're going about their business and the cops had no way of knowing and no reason to suspect and no reason to search. There's a lot of factors involved here. So when you start saying blacks don't belong in prison when they did commit the crime, and blacks can't be racist because they don't have the power to affect whites, I think that's a very dangerous mindset to have. But I appreciate him coming on, and I look forward to talking to him again right here on the Steve Malzberg Show. We're coming back, Newsmax TV and radio.